Welcome, everyone. I'm Sam Pratt. Thank you so much for joining us for the CBI monthly webinar. I look forward to this every single month, getting to know all of you. I know you're starting to pop in to the webinar today, so a big welcome. Of course, I'm in the beautiful community of Ottawa, the capital of this gorgeous country, and I'm coming to you from Algonquin in the territory. We appreciate the unsurrendered and unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. We appreciate the word of this land, and we will treat this land beautifully today. I want to know where you're coming from, so please let me know in the chat. Are you coming from somewhere in Ontario? Are you joining us from Prince Edward Island, British Columbia, Manitoba? Where are you coming from? I want to know all of that. We've got such an interesting topic today. We're talking about that building relationships between family and community foundations, and this is a big one today. Newfoundland and Winnipeg. Yay! I'm so excited. Kelly, Garrett, thank you so much for spending time with us today. We've got some really great guests today, some really interesting discussion today. The hour always goes by so quick. So I want to make sure that we get the most time with our wonderful guests today. A lot of people joining us from a beautiful New Brunswick today. I'm hearing that my camera's frozen. If that's for everybody, Hannah, let me know. I'm going to introduce the wonderful Hannah Rockburn today. Hannah is the glue that keeps us all together here at the Capacity Building Institute. Hannah, over to you for you to tell us a little bit about CBI and that we have. Hannah.
My name is Hannah, and I am a volunteer currently with the Capacity Building Institute and Sustainable Capacity Solutions. CBI is a program of Sustainable Capacity Solutions that provides training, coaching, and mentorship support to staff and volunteers in the nonprofit sector all across Canada. We have this mission to provide equal opportunity and access to capacity building training for all environmental leaders. Through our tailored training, we empower individuals and organizations at every stage of their journey, from internships to executive directors, equipping them with the skills and knowledge to drive lasting environmental change. And our approach focuses on 6 core themes. So we focus on financial management, governance and board development, volunteer engagement and human resources, communications and outreach, risk management and legal issues, and leadership and organizational culture. So currently you are part of one of our free monthly capacity building webinar series, which is a great resource for expanding your knowledge and strengthening your network. These 1-hour sessions are designed to sort of help enhance your capacity building literacy in a practical and relatable manner. This year, we also have trained over 50 youth ages 18 to 30 in developing their nonprofit leadership skills and supporting over 25 different grassroots organizations across Canada. And so through this program, the youth had received one-on-one mentoring, they built their professional networks, and they were able to gain top-tier training from our incredible experts. We are very fortunate to have a fantastic roster of trainers and coaches supporting our programs, with new connections and guest speakers joining us every year. Their expertise help ensure that we continue developing top-tier quality training and coaching for all of you. So some of our main trainers include Sam, who's hosting our webinar tonight. We have Rob Barnes, bringing over 10 years of experience in the sector. Barb King, a seasoned leader with over 20 years experience in management, and also Alex Keenan, who specializes in communications, and Dwayne Taylor, who is also dedicated to helping nonprofits over a decade. So I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge our incredible role in trainers and our network partners that have played in making this program and training possible. And then their behind the scenes support, whether that's sharing resources with all of you, providing input, being guest speakers, or just helping us reach the right communities. It's been essential to our success and our work here. And we often talk about capacity building as a collective effort, and our partners are a clear example of what that looks like in action. So we're truly grateful for their collaborations and ongoing commitment to strengthening the nonprofit sector. As we head into the summer, we will be taking a pause on our main programming. But in the meantime, we do encourage you all to stay connected. You can follow us on our various social media channels. We have a YouTube channel that you can subscribe to get the latest recordings of any of our training videos. And then also you can sign up for our newsletter, and this will allow you to receive any updates on any new offerings or opportunities that will come up later in the year, whether that as a participant or if you're interested in being a trainer or coach. And we are always grateful for your continued interest and support, and we look forward to sharing what comes next in the future. So we will have our next webinar will be in September. We'll have a guest speaker that will be talking about board governance. So you can save the date of September 16th in your calendar. That's when we will come back after our summer break and continue these amazing webinar sessions.
Thank you so much, Hannah. Of course, I have September 16th circled in my calendar. I'll be here sharing with some great speakers. But today, I don't want to waste one more second because I want to introduce our three great panelists today for you. I'll start with Jim O'Reilly. Hi, Jim. Welcome today. And Jim, where are you joining us from today?
I'm joining you from Toronto.
From beautiful Toronto. Thank you so much for joining us. And Gina McDonnell. Gina, hello, welcome.
Hello, I'm happy to be here.
And where are you joining from today?
I'm in Goderich, Ontario.
Oh, wonderful. That's wonderful. And Christina Enrig, you're always somewhere exciting. Where are you today?
I am in Nova Scotia on Briar Island.
Beautiful, beautiful. Today's topic is so important, that building relationships with family and community foundations. I feel like the best day to have this webinar is today, or for me, it would have been 30 years ago. But today, I'm going to take all of the wonderful knowledge that you're going to share today, because I know that this is a topic that's near and dear to so many people's hearts. Gina, why don't you kick us off? Tell us a little bit about your organization, and let's get to know you a little bit better today.
I chair the Charles H. Ivy Foundation, which is a small family foundation, philanthropic foundation, and we generally make grants between probably close to around $300,000 a year. And our focus over the last 5 years has been youth at risk, but we're as of next year we will be changing our focus, and that has yet to be determined.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much for that background. Jim, we'd love to hear from you as well. What's your organization, and tell us a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, so I work with the Chakras Foundation. We were started in 1988, sole source endowment from Charles and Joey Alexander in Montreal. The interests that we've developed over the years are ones in environmental initiatives and educational work. And then a branch off of that educational work has been long-form journalism. So we're interested in new work in those areas that we can support. We give, I'm going to say, roughly 20 grants a year of the, on average, about $25,000. It's up and down, but in that ballpark. And we tend to prioritize groups that, I'm going to say, charities that in general are, I guess, on the scale of things, slightly on the smaller side. I'm going to say probably revenues of $2 million a year or less. And I think it speaks to the topic today because the reason we're in that space is because those are the groups who we find we can have the best relationships with. So that's where we feel we can be useful.
Fantastic. And Jim's already used that important word today, relationships. Christina, you built so many incredible relationships over the years. I know you, but let's make sure everybody knows you. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Hi, everybody. Nice to be here. As always, I love being on these calls. And some of you may not know, but I am the chair of the Enrig Family Foundation. And so that's really the hat I'm wearing today at this call. But most of you would know me through the Sustainable Capacity Foundation, where I work full time. But in the context of today's conversation, I'll be coming at it from my family foundation's perspective. And so we fund environmental projects across Canada through our small family foundation, but we also fund other topics as well.
Yeah, really, really important conversations today. And let's kick it off, Jim. I think, many people, if you're working with individuals for fundraising, you're working with corporations, very different than working with a foundation. Give us some sense of what you look for when you're working with a funder from your perspective, from the relationship perspective.
Oh, so yeah, that's a great question. Once we've given a grant, if we're really looking now at setting up that relationship, um, we I think what's the most powerful tool that we engage with is when recipients of grants, the charities who have received the grants, keep us in touch with the projects that are underway and the projects that we funded, and they can tell us. Sometimes it's an update on the project or an article on the project, and um, sometimes there's one group we fund, for example, that every 2 months will send us a photo from one of their events. Always invitations to follow them on social media. It's those sort of things that tell us that a charity that we're funding it really cares about the project that's going on and is interested in keeping us in touch. Sometimes it's invitations to webinars with participants in their projects or webinars that staff on the group are doing. So keeping us in touch is the first part of a good relationship. I'd say the second part, and I know, forgive me if this seems obvious, but is the reporting at the end. So if a report's required by a funder, and we don't have a long report, we don't want it to be a burden to any of the charities that we fund. But we really look for those reports, and we try and read them quite carefully. Um, we'll even read the ones that say the project didn't go that well because we've really valued cases where a group is quite honest about how something went. And we always tend to look in reports for ways that charities have said, and here's a lasting result of the project. That's really motivating for us, where we can say, oh, we funded a project and there's been a residual benefit for the group or the community or the network or something like that. All of those things really help us set up a relationship from which we might want to return, and we often want to return to that same group and say, hey, what are you doing now? And what projects do you have on the go? Tell us about them. Maybe there's another opportunity to help, for us to help.
Mm. Boy, there's so much in there, Jim, and I want to dissect some of that. And Gina, I'm going to let you sort of jump in here as well, and add anything that might have been on your radar in terms of building that relationship, connecting with the funders that the different agencies that you're working with or organizations you're working with. Is there anything that Jim missed from your perspective?
Our foundation tries to establish a relationship before funding. As a small family foundation, we send or we appoint however, an applicant, we will appoint a family member and who will contact that organization and try to work with them and even potentially work with them to further their application. And it's a way to get to know them before they even get started with us. And then it kind of depends if it's a 1 year or a multi-year granting.
Right.
We do. We certainly stay in touch with ones that we've given multi-year grants to and ask them to report as well. And they might have to report before they would receive any further granting. So the reporting is very important, as Jim said, and actually he answered it all very, very well. So I'm not sure how much more I can add to that.
No, that's very, very helpful though, Gina. I appreciate your perspective. Christina, let's talk a little bit about the reporting piece, because I think um, I'll be honest with you, I'll put my hand up and maybe others in the group will will agree with me. That sometimes does keep me a little bit awake at night in terms of, and Jim beautifully talked about this. Sometimes it doesn't go the way you want. Sometimes there's outside influences that the project didn't go exactly how you want. That reporting piece, how can we not maybe worry about it so much, but at the same time, make sure that the impact is there when we're filling out those important reports?
Yeah, I think the first thing you want to think about as an environmental organization thinking about reporting is who is the funder that you're talking to. So today our focus is on family foundations, and there are just under 7,000 private foundations in Canada. So just so folks are aware, there's private foundations like the ones that the three of us are representing today, which may be family foundations or other types of private foundations. There's also public foundations, which include things like community foundations and the bigger public ones. And then there's also obviously other types of funders like government funders and different types of places where you might apply for funding. So I think what you'll find, and because I've been on the other side of the world as an executive director in the environmental sector for many years before doing this work in philanthropy, I think you'll find that the private family foundations are your friendliest folks to deal with when it comes to your reporting, because they don't necessarily have to have the same, it's not they don't have the same level of scrutiny as government, but you'll find that a report from a private family foundation is going to be much more simplified and friendly than a report for a government grant, which is probably going to want to know every single copy of every single receipt, sometimes have excessive amount of reporting scaling because it is public money that's going into the project. There is still accountability, of course, because private family foundations are still charities and are required to be regulated through CRA and have reporting requirements. But I think you'll find the reporting is less scary. So I just wanted to start off with that bit of context setting, because I know for me, when I'm working with private family foundations, when I used to be an executive director, it was always the folks that were a little bit more willing to be personal and connection and to help support the work that you're doing. And now on the funder side, it's very similar. Like Jim said, we try to have a very simplified reporting process. We exactly don't want people to be staying up at night worrying about it. And I loved what Jim said about being open to those failure reports. If something didn't go well, to be able to be honest and talk about that in your reporting. That's an opportunity that I think you'll find most private family foundations are pretty open to that and to the learning process.
No, really, really, really good point. And Jim, I'm just going to sort of touch on that a little bit in terms of, you were mentioning how crucial the reporting is. What do you see that works? I mean, we often hear about the qualitative and quantitative parts of the report. A lot of foundations want to hear about the numbers, but they also want to hear those anecdotal stories. Where's the balance there, Jim?
Yeah, that's a great question. To be honest, I ask for the numbers in a very brief way, and then I have to say I skirt over them because the more interesting story is, what happened with them. We do give an option at our foundation to do reporting with a phone call as opposed to a written report. And I have to say, I think slightly less than half of our recipients take us up on that. But I personally find it much more informative than something written because I can quickly go through some numbers. And if a number's high or low, you can say, well, hey, what's the story there? And so anyway, I hope other foundations consider doing phone calls because I think they're not really much more time for us. I hope they're not more time for the charities, and I think they're much more informative. But I'd say key points that we look for are, yes, some of the numbers, but the takeaways are, besides that, I'm going to say three things. One is residual effects that are benefits for the organization, because we always like to see that in some way, if either there has been skill acquisition or there's been sort of organizational gain or something like that, then that's nice for us to know. The second part is, and this is quite important for us, has there been some sort of network or element of network building, increased communication, community building as a residual effect? And I sometimes tell sort of the two stories here. One, a cautionary tale, which is where we had a great program that didn't really do a lot of outreach or community building. And then, unfortunately, a key member, a staff member on this in this charity left, and the whole project didn't achieve what I think it probably could have achieved
Oh.
had there been people, a whole community of people who supported it and bought in. So that was a bit of a lesson to us. And some of our best projects are ones where fascinating new connections were made over the course of a project. And then we knew that it had a resilience that could carry on. So that's the second part, the network building that is important for us to hear about. And I'd say the third part, and we put this at the end of our report, is just tell us about a little incident that you feel encapsulated the project. And, you know, foundations and all of us in foundations, we're really susceptible to elevator pitches. Like we really do love them. So anything you can give us that really encapsulates that a great feeling or a great incident in the project can be very powerful. It really can. You know, that's the sort of thing I can pass on to all our directors and say, hey, here was something really good, and people remember them.
And Gina, just on that note, I love storytelling. I mean, this is why I'm in the work that I'm in. I love being able to share those stories. Do those stories spur you on when you see those in reporting? Do those spur you on to then potentially fund for future projects? Is that one of the things that, you sort of feel like that relationship is building and you want to see more of those stories happen for a particular organization?
Absolutely. I think, we're human. We love to hear stories.
Yeah.
Especially feel-good stories. So it doesn't have to be that. It can be something, as Jim said, so it started out one way and it switched and turned into something else and something unexpected, which may have been better than what was originally planned, or it may not have. And we recently had somebody that we've funded a multi-year, and they said the program that we were initially funding has not really happened, but they have this other program that they think needs more funding, and perhaps we could switch over. And just the way they explained it made sense. And so yes, I think that's something that is helpful and does help form a better relationship with them. I don't know. I always say honesty is the best policy. So if they're being honest with us and telling us really what's happening, it makes us trust them that much more.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point. And I love that so much. What's something, Christina, that you see, in an application or in reporting that you think, oh, I wish I could just tell them just not to do that?
Yeah.
What's a big no?
Well, I think the first thing to do when you're applying for private family foundation funding is to really understand what that family foundation is interested in. I know it sounds obvious, but family foundations, especially because some of them are smaller and are more focused, some will be only interested in climate change. Some might be only interested in nature conservation. Some might be interested in animal welfare. Like it really is important to know specifically what their interests are from a theme point of view, but also maybe from an audience point of view, if they're interested in youth programs or not. So I see often people applying for funding for the wrong target audience with the wrong funder. And so it feels like a bit of a wasted effort for them to apply for a youth project to a seniors funder. And it is sometimes harder, I will admit. Some family foundations, including my own, do not have always clear information as to what the source is. We're a by invitation only funder, so we don't have an online portal. But a lot of the bigger family foundations do have online portals and very clear priorities. So I would say that's your first place to start. And then if it's not clear, the other place to look is what have they funded in the past? Is there something they funded in the past? Like, is it on food security, or is it on a topic that is related to what your organization is doing? So just making sure that those applications are in alignment with the priorities of the foundation. And if you're not clear, the best place to start is to have that conversation ahead of time, if you're able to. Some foundations are open to having those conversations ahead of time. to make sure that there is alignment, so that it's not a waste of your time to write it, and it's not a waste of my time to read it. So it's the same kind of benefit for both parties.
Yeah, beautifully said. Gina, I just have a hunch that you have something you want to add. It was just a feeling I had.
Well, yeah, I really agree with what Christina's saying.
Mhm.
And also wanted to say, when making applications or filling out reports or any of that, one thing I really, and it may be just a personal thing, but I don't like repetitiveness. So just answer the question and don't answer the question again in the next question, because
Right,
we
right,
read
right.
the whole thing. We don't read just, it's not like one person
Yeah,
reading one question or answer
right.
and somebody else is reading a different answer. We are all reading the whole thing. So we don't need to see the same information over and over and over again. It just makes it longer and makes it more boring and makes it, we start to drift off. So stay focused, and as Christina said too, make sure you're applying to the right foundation for the right thing. Make sure that that's really something that they support.
Hmm.
Otherwise, you're wasting a lot of your own time to writing something that isn't going to fit anyway.
Yeah, no, for sure. And Jim, in terms of timelines, we know that one of the biggest challenges we have, and I used to have this big giant spreadsheet. It felt like I needed a big giant table to house it, when the deadline was, how many um, words I was allowed to put in, all of those kind of, those things to kind of keep track of when the reporting was due. Um, Talk to me a little bit about it from your perspective, those timelines. How crucial are they for operating a foundation like you do?
Well, and I know, and I have to say, I have a lot of sympathy for the people who are doing the fundraising, because it is tough. And
Hmm.
to keep everything, I mean, project funding by itself to start with is tough. And then on top of that, the deadlines and the restrictions on applications. So I I'm I want to apologize in advance for many of the sort of hoops that you have to jump through to do it. And so on our end of things, we do try and make things as easy as possible. That is to say, what we do at our foundation is we have an open call for proposals that charities can pitch to us. And we say that it, what we want in the very first stage of your inquiry is to give us no more than one page. And we'll take a one-page proposal answering some basic questions. What are the needs? Why is your organization well qualified to meet the need? And tell us a bit about the project. But we keep it at 400 words, one page. And then we make that open. We have two deadlines a year. Um, and they're arbitrary for us, so sorry about that. We those that's sort of our granting cycle. Um, we go through and we screen all of those, and then it's sort of like Christina said, there are going to be some which just aren't quite the right fit. They're not our niche, so those ones I'm afraid we can't do. But it's in those cases where we hope, well, it was only a one-page proposal, so I hope an administrator didn't spend too much time on that. And then with the ones that we feel we
Right.
really can follow up because they are our interests or our priorities, we go back to those groups and say, could you please fill out the application form? Our application form, I hope it's not too long, 8 pages, including all the charts. And we do have the advice at the beginning. It was a quotation from Lord Chesterfield, who is said to have written to his son, I am sorry I did not have time to write you a shorter letter. So we want people to try and keep them everything as short as possible. So, but
Yeah.
and then the directors read those application forms. But we hope by having that first stage that it's the least amount of admin time for groups. But I agree with Christina that
Hmm.
a lot of it is, and this I know I realize takes a lot of work, but to realize for a foundation what sort of things they fund and what sort of things they don't fund, and if you can use the CRA website. I personally find the CRA website when you search a charity and then you go into their 3010 report for the year, and you can find every single grant they've given in the previous year. You can get a sense of who they fund and what. The other thing that I find useful that I just tend to do because I've been in the business is if I go to an event or I get a publication or I get something for this, the work of a charity or a group, I always skip to the back where it says who funded us. And then I look at that to see who's funding events in that field. If I go to the theater, I take the program and skip to the back and look at all the funders, just because I find that interesting and informative. That's a good tool, I think, for people to see what family foundations can fund.
Yeah, for sure. And Christine, let me ask you, the question. And when I think about family foundations and all of the demands that would be, from your perspective in terms of, reviewing the applications, how can we make it easier? Obviously the application comes from us, but how can we make it easier to, um, to see these applications? Is there a trick to that?
Well, I think the first thing that you need to really do is take a look at what the funder is asking for up front. So in Jim's case, it's a two-step application process. There's a one-page letter of intent, or however you termed it, and then a potential for a full application. You'll have some funders that have that two-step process, and others where it's just a straight-up application. And so making sure that you're following the steps and giving them exactly what is needed right up front. So certain foundations will say, please send me these 5 things as attachments, right? Right up front with your application. And I've heard from many of my colleagues to say, even though it's listed very clearly, send this letter of intent and send these 5 attachments, half the time those don't come in. So just getting the basics right in terms of what's asked for. And unfortunately, the truth is, what you're going to be asked for is going to be different from many of the different foundations. And part of that is a factor of size. So Gina talked about, giving out $300,000 a year in granting. Well, the McConnell Foundation gives out 30 million a year in granting. So, and that's also a family foundation. So, depending on the size of the family foundation, their requirements, steps, tools, and resources might be different. And so just make sure you know kind of who you're dealing with and what the needs are from the foundation, and then be able to follow up accordingly. And like Gina said, not repeating yourself, and trying to make it as clear as possible how you align with the organization. Those would be some of the tips that I would say.
And on the flip side, do you remember, ever opening up an application or reporting and it almost sings to you? It was so beautiful and you're like, oh, everybody could write like this. Has there been moments like that?
Yes, not many, but yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and it's like you want to reach out and hug them when they get it just right.
Yeah.
And because it's not easy. It's really, really challenging to, as Jim said, I can't remember how that quote went, but to write it shorter than, as opposed to, I didn't have enough time to write a short letter. It's so true.
Yeah.
Because even myself, when I write things, I write them down and then I start slashing and burning. And if they would do that, they could get the point across so much better. And some people do. Some people are really good at it. And some are not. But yes, we treasure the ones that come in that are to the point and on point, and all the correct attachments are there, and exactly what you asked for. It's interesting too, because listening to Jim and the two-step setup that they have for their application process, they have for their foundation is exactly the same as what we do as well. But we are looking at 2026 and moving forward, switching more to the way Christina is doing things, and doing it by invitation only. So the thing with the family foundation is we don't all live in the same place, and our interests are very different. So it's hard to be diverse enough. And by going to the way Christina's foundation works, we can individually bring in the things that interest us, and hopefully have an impact with whatever interests the individuals within the family.
We just had a follow-up question. I'm going to take it just while we're right here with you, Gina, what made those applications sing aside from having all the proper attachments? Was it the storytelling? Was it the wording? Was it the consistency? Was it the how compact it was?
It really was because they did exactly what we asked, and they answered
Yeah.
the questions exactly as they were asked, and they kept it to the right number of words. They didn't try to sometimes that they'll try to add on sections when there isn't enough space. So it just it's really just doing what's asked that creates
Mhm.
that perfect application.
Could I add one to
And
a
I think
thought too, Sam, if
of
that's
course, Jim,
okay?
go ahead. Of course.
Sorry, Gina, were you done there? Okay. What can come through too, and what we really appreciate when it comes through is often uh, the connection with the objectives of the project, or perhaps the people you're working with. So if someone's gonna, if we can tell if a group is really excited about, say, an education program that they're delivering because they know that, and they're telling us that the kids are really benefiting from it, or
Mhm.
that their project is good because the outreach they're doing and is really having results. And we can tell when that passion comes through, and 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 often it comes through because they're saying that they're really directly meeting a need, and they are addressing it well, and they're excited about their work. And so that's always helpful to us. At the same time, I'd say too, and I know this is hard, um, patience is really, you never quite know what's going on sometimes on the other side. So you might say, well, we applied this time, we sent in our little letter, they said no. But you might do it again, and sometimes we'll get a proposal, and I'll say, we can't take it this time. We're funding similar things, or we're really overloaded in your geographic area. We can't really take it on. But please send it another one in 6 months. Tell us what's going on in 6 months. So patience is great. And again, with those the invitations to groups, or the contact with groups. I remember working with a fundraiser once, and she said she had a 3-year timeline for potential donors. And she'd say, the first year she'd just tell them a lot about what they were doing, and the second year more invitations and a small ask and lead up to a bigger ask. So if that's possible, well, I mean, I know it's hard, but patience, because things might work out if it didn't at the beginning.
Yeah, and I'm just
Mhm.
going to jump into Sam because I think that, getting your messaging as an organization very clear about who you're benefiting and how, so that you can tell those stories from the ground in a way that is compelling, trying to turn that conversation and that communications piece into an application, it is a bit of an art more than a science. And so when it does come through that we can hear about those kids in the classroom and how that education program is making a difference, or about the nature-based learning, or conservation projects, or even climate actions, when you can articulate how your organization's actions benefit whoever the target is that it's benefiting, and sharing
Mhm.
some of those stories for us by answering the questions we're asking, I think that's a way that can be very compelling, and another way that an application can sing.
Yeah, would be beautifully said, Christina. Thank you for that. And Gina, let me ask you this, and I'm going to actually ask all of your input on this, and then we're going to get to some of the great questions that have come in from the audience today, and the participants. But relationship building, it means one thing to me, it means something else to somebody else. The cadence of when we contact you, how we're contacting you. Some people like handwritten notes, some people like photographs, some people like a video. Some people say, I funded you. I'll see you in a year from now with the report. What's your preference, Gina? Let us in on sort of the preferences of your foundation.
Um, our foundation, I think, as I said before, we try to between the first and second step. So between the first letter that is received, the one page, which is open to anybody, and then the second application that is if they meet the requirements of the first letter, and we reach out to them and say we need a full application. This is when somebody within our foundation will contact them and work with them and kind of get to know that charity. And unless it's somebody we already know because we have funded before. But that's all part of forming the relationship, and as Christina said too, sharing the stories, and that helps form the relationship. And I can't remember where I was going with this.
That's okay. That's okay. Does Jim or Christina want to jump in? What in terms of the cadence of how you like to be thanked and how you like to be communicated to?
I can go if you want. I send out bulletins to my directors on the foundation, and it's always nice if I have a little snippet of news about a project, not long, but just something about the progress of it or an event or something like that. So our preference is sort of short and sweet, and something visual is great. And in terms of long-term relationships, yeah, again, it's just nice for us to know that the groups that we're helping, they see themselves as dynamic and changing, and they're learning. And then if they're learning, we're learning too. To transmit a little bit of stuff about what they're learning in the field is important for us. We do want to know what's going on in the general field of environmental work and education. So something that keeps us up on the latest is helpful too.
Christine, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the minimum requirement is to send in the things when they're asked for. So sending in the application or the letter and the report on the timeline that is needed is a sort of basic. But any of this little extras you can do to be able to say, hey, we just had a really great event on the weekend. The fine art is to not do it so much that it becomes annoying, right? Because you can't
Exactly.
be responding
Yeah.
all the time. And so it's about giving a little bit of an update. But if you have an active project with a funder that they are funding something you are doing, and let's say your project is going to have 10 events over the course of a year, then I would say 2 or 3 times over the course of that year, you might send out a story saying, hey, this is what we just did. It was awesome. Here's a photo. And then I think once in that year, you can extend an invitation to say, we're having this event coming up in a month if you'd like to join us. Now, that's kind of like the very rare opportunity where you get a foundation able to come out to your event. But I would say the most impactful site visits for me, where I've actually gone and met with a grantee and toured their facility or learned about their program or attended their event, have been some of the most impactful. So obviously you should extend the invitation, but a funder's not gonna be able to go to every event for every grantee for sure.
Right.
But when that happens, take advantage of that. If you have a funder coming into your end of town and they give you the opportunity to connect in person, take advantage of that opportunity and really showcase the work that you're doing, because it's a golden opportunity and it happens not very often.
Right. Beautifully said. We have some fantastic questions from the audience. I'm going to start, and I'll ask you to jump in, whoever sort of wants to answer this one. Do private family funders support nonprofit societies as well as registered charities? I
Sure.
thought I knew yeah, go ahead, Christina.
Yeah, let me take that one just so people and you guys can definitely add to it. So the first thing to understand for anyone out there who's watching and is a nonprofit and not a charity is that there are new rules that can enable more disbursements from foundations to what we call a non-qualified donee. So if you're a charity, you're considered a qualified donee. If you have that charity registration number, then it's easy peasy for a private foundation to give you the grant or the donation. If you're not a qualified donee and you don't have a partner who is a qualified donee, but you're just a federally or provincially incorporated not-for-profit or society, then you might fall under what's called a qualifying disbursement. So recently, the federal government changed the rules with the Budget Implementation Act, and it does allow private foundations and public foundations to give qualifying disbursements to non-qualified donees. So I know that's a mouthful, but not every private foundation has taken the government up on that because the rules around those qualifying disbursements are different. They're not necessarily all set up to do so, and some of them have to actually go through the process of changing some of their corporate objectives, the corporate objectives of foundation to do that. So the point is, it's allowed, but not everybody is doing it. And so the first thing to find out is whether the private foundation in question that you're talking about will allow contributions to a nonprofit that is not a charity. And I would say there are many of them who do, especially now that it's been a couple of years since these rules have been changed, and we knew they were coming. Many of them are taking advantage of that. So it's not necessarily as important to have charitable status as it used to be. However, many of the smaller family foundations and the ones who don't necessarily have the budget and time and resources to go through the process of redoing their corporate objects or making changes, they may not have made that step. So they may still be just giving to charities. But I always find that a great partnership with a charity is a great way to get around that and have a really great donation processed in collaboration with someone who does have charitable status. So there are options out there. I don't know if Gino or Jim wants to add to that.
That's great. Okay. Gina, did you want to add something?
I was just going to say we are one of those foundations, smaller foundations, that has not jumped on board with that new federal law. So we are still only granting to charities.
Okay, that's really good advice. We have a really great question here. When a group is by invitation only, how do you get on their radar? So that's a great question. Jim, do you want to take that one?
I could, although we don't really have that situation
Christine,
because
you do though, right? Sorry, I just
no,
realized
we don't. We have an open call for project grants. That's where they come from.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Christina, I'm sorry, I mixed that up. You're by invitation only, Christina.
Yeah, so through my full-time job at Sustainable Capacity Foundation, we have an application system, and for my family foundation, it's by invitation only. So I will say that is the trickiest part, is to be able to make that first connection. You obviously can reach out and try to connect with a group, but generally if they say they're by invitation only, then you're not necessarily going to get as as responsive. But I think 2 points were brought up earlier. Jim mentioned the idea of connecting at another event with an organization, so getting to know them through something else that they're already sponsoring, whether it's a theater or they're funding another initiative. And then also, going and doing that research to understand through CRA what it is they're funding and who they're funding, because you can find that out. And so by connecting with other groups that they are funding, that's one really great way to build that relationship but obviously there has to be a level of trust and opportunity there to be able to say, hey, can you introduce me to this great foundation that's funding your work? If you feel like you have an alignment with someone who's doing something similar in another city, that's often worked as well, where I funded an organization, they said, hey, this work is awesome, talk to my colleagues in another community who are doing something similar. So that's one way. But yeah, it is probably the trickiest one.
Yeah, fair enough. Gina, anything to add there?
Well, we're just transitioning from, as I say, what Jim is doing more to what Christina's foundation is doing. So we haven't experienced that yet, but from a charity's perspective, I can see that it would be really challenging if everybody is doing that. It's really all about networking and who you know and making contacts, and which can be very, very challenging, especially for newer, smaller charities that may not have that experience or have that network already set up. From a foundation's perspective, it may be easier in a sense because we can also go on the CRA website. We can just go on general websites and have a look. We can get in touch with organizations like this one, who have all kinds of charities that are within a certain focus, in the environment in this case. And if somebody's interested in the environment, they can find out all kinds of different charities. So also from the charity's perspective, if they have joined an organization like yours, they can network with each other and through you, as to finding perhaps the right fit somewhere.
Thank you. So beautifully said. This one is so fascinating to me. So the next question comes from an anonymous attendee. This is a brilliant question. Can you speak to the use of AI or Chat GPT in applications? Who wants to take a stab at this first? Oh, Jim, you pushed your button. There you go. You first.
This is an interesting question. Someone told me a while ago, they said, oh, if you see the word delve, it means it's AI, which I don't think that's quite true, but that's what they said. You know, to me, it doesn't, I'm not sure it matters, or if in this sort of one pager that we asked for at the beginning, because I think we ask quite a complex question that if AI is working on it, it's not doing a very good job. And the question we ask is, what is the need that you're addressing, and what is the evidence for that need? And I don't know if AI doesn't do a good job, or everybody, or it's such a profoundly tough question. But if we don't, it, if in, I guess what I'm saying is, even computers seem to have a tough time with that question. And the people who can really nail it with an elevator pitch, this is the need, and this is how we know it's out there, all have my attention right away. When it comes to reading the applications that are written by AI, I think it's I don't the directors aren't complaining about things that are written by AI. They're just complaining of, if they have concerns about an application, it's just that something wasn't clear enough. So I don't know. I guess if people want to use AI, okay, but you know, just you may have to use it as a draft and then really work on clarifying it, and
Yep.
that's where I'd come from.
Jean, any thoughts you want to add? Christine, I'll ask you as well.
I would agree with Jim that I mean, we talked earlier about the personal aspect of applying and putting your heart and soul into something, and if you fully believe in it, trying to relay that, and going through AI or using AI, how is that going to really show how you really feel about something, and the importance you feel about this project or this charity or this your organization, whatever. So I agree. On the other hand, reading applications, yeah, if as long as the application addresses everything, I guess that's okay. But it might be hard to feel the heart in it.
Yeah, no, 100% agree with that. Christina.
Yeah, I mean, I would say a couple of years ago, if you had asked me, I would have said, like some foundations, we don't want to see AI in our applications. But my thoughts on that have changed a little bit, because I've talked to some people who've used some of these tools, and they've shown how they can be so effective. So I think where AI doesn't work is where you ask it to create everything from scratch and try to plug in a few things and say, create this for me. I think where AI can be helpful is where you create the story first, and then you say to AI, can you make this a little bit more whatever? Like, can you help frame it in a way, like just to polish it? And then you still have to go back to that polished attempt and revisit it to see if it still connects, if it still is realistic. Is it still, it has it become too professional of language that it's not, it's not like reachable. So I don't think AI is strictly, can't do it. I think sometimes you can really tell when something is AI, and that doesn't always feel good or sound good or read well. And so I think you have to be careful with it. You should always have anything you're about to submit, whether it's AI or not, you should definitely have someone else from outside of your organization to read the entire thing. I think
100%.
Sam's the expert on saying she gets her grandma to read some stuff letters
I do.
over. That's
Yeah.
always stuck with me because I do think that, you know, depending on the type of foundation, not everybody in the room is going to be an expert on the thing you are asking about. So
Yeah.
sometimes if you're just a climate focused foundation, maybe that will be true. Everyone's a energy whiz and understands climate really well. But in other
Mhm.
cases, a foundation and the family members, especially from the foundation, not all of them would have the background in certain areas. So if the application is too technical, if the language coming from AI or otherwise is too technical, it might just not be successful because people can't really understand what it is you're saying. So I'm not saying
Mhm.
dumb things down. I'm just saying to make them accessible, and
Right.
just be careful how you use AI to make sure that that accessibility doesn't make it over the top. Those are just some thoughts.
No, for sure, for sure. We had some fantastic questions. The last question we have answered already, and that was in terms of invite only, just reaching out and making that contact. Does there mean there isn't capacity, which you've already addressed? You know, you kind of roll the dice a little bit if you're reaching out, if they're not sort of open for those applications like most charities are. This has been, I honestly, I could do one more hour easily. I have so many other questions, and I know our attendees were really engaged today. We had many, many people joining us today all across the country. And this has been really very impactful for me as well. I mean, I've been in this sector for a long time, over 35 years, but I learned so much today. And I know that your insights as well have helped all those people that are just working so hard for their charities, particularly environmental charities that are really trying to make an impact in this country. So thank you so much to Gina and Jim and Christina for sharing with me today, and with all of our amazing attendees across the country. We've got all sorts of webinars that you can watch, so feel free to go back and watch ones that you might have missed. We're going to see everybody in September. Thank you, Christina, as always. Thank you so much, Jim. And thank you, Gina. I appreciate your time today. Appreciate it very much. We'll say goodbye to everybody. Stay in touch with CBI, stay in touch with the Capacity Building Institute. They are really doing incredible things, and they have created and helped leaders all across this country. And we're so happy that you joined us today. I'm Sam LaPrade, and we'll see you in September, September 16th. Mark your calendar. Mine's marked. We'll see you then.